What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where in this one, we're going to talk a little bit about Braden Smith, getting some information finally about what went on with him, what made him miss the end of the season, and everything that's gone on. We haven't heard really anything. The team all along has kept this very internal, and all along the sentiment around this was that that something serious was going on. There was no telling. Was it personal? Was it with his family? Something going on in some regard in that way. And in what the story that came out was, it was honestly more than I expected. Um, and I think it's a good reminder that, these football players, right? This is one of those times where like you just realize these football players are human, right? And if you enjoy the content, of course, make sure to hit the like button, be subscribed with notifications on. But as we continue here, talking about Braden Smith, there was a whole article that came out about everything that went on, the different conversations that were had, and I'll keep the link for the article down in the comment section, or I'm sorry, in the description for you guys if you want to go check out the entire article. This is really just like I went through it earlier. I'm not going to sit here and read everything and just put their work into my video. Just really wanted to talk about what's going on, right? Fill you guys in on what's happening with Braden Smith. And this is one of those situations where a guy had to walk away from the game for his mental. He had to get his mental right. There's a really powerful quote in here about what he had talked about, what he was going through mentally. And in this quote, he says, "I was physically present, but I was nowhere to be found." And that right there, kind of a thing that Charvarius Ward was talking about last year, where, if he was physically present for his teammates, but was never really mentally all in on the game last year because of everything that he went through, him and his family, and the tragedy that they experienced and had to go through. Braden Smith, I mean, seemingly going through the same thing in a different way, just going through a major mental battle is what he's had going on. And there was, another part of this quote here that says, "I did not care about playing football. I didn't care about hanging out with my family, with my wife, with my newborn son. I felt like I was a month away from putting a bullet through my brain," which is very graphic, right? A very graphic thing to come out and say, very honest, very vulnerable thing for him to come out and say, and to be in that spot, like thank goodness he walked away from football, from where he was at. And it's not just walking away to get your mind right. As I went through this, there was a conversation that he had with his wife, and it was something that he had said, and she knew that it was time for him to go to a facility where he can work on what he needs to work on, right? Talk to a therapist every day and go through daily therapy, and try to figure out, what's going on. How do we get past this, right? And it's a form of OCD that Braden Smith deals with, a lot of it being connected to his faith. As you continue to go through this article, it's a lot of him talking about his faith, and something that was notable was that is he so because of his faith, right, he's and he believes, right, that Jesus was the only perfect man to ever live, right? And like his thing is that like he strives to be successful, strives to be perfect in everything that he does, and trying to get that pursuit for perfection, right? That OCD, that part, the stuff that he's dealing with internally to do that, and the things that he has to sacrifice in order to be able to do that, right? Those things catch up with him, and obviously put him in a spot where he felt the need to walk away from football. And luckily, he's at a spot where he's obviously he's getting better, right? He restructured his contract. He's going to be playing football for the Colts again. But there was a point where he was thinking about retiring, and that's part of this. That's part of one of the conversations when his wife Courtney knew that something was really wrong was when he started talking about like not wanting to play football, with how he's always been about football, to getting to a point where he wanted to retire already, and she knew something was wrong. Braden Smith talks about OCD latches on to critical moments, and that was very soon after. Here's where you get the other quote about him telling his wife that he wants to retire. And I've seen people talking about this on Twitter. This is like a mental battle that some people like really just have no idea about, like people talking about on Twitter about how like they didn't realize that this sort of thing happens for people. And I think it happens for people at different levels, and of course not everybody is affected by anything like this, but I do think that there's definitely a percentage of people out there that deal with, whether it's like Braden Smith and in your faith and trying to strive to be perfect and just getting caught up in needing to be perfect, everything needing to be perfect, and everything that goes along with and now here I didn't understand that there were like different forms of OCD. I guess that makes sense, but there are the different forms of OCD, and the one that he has, again, where he's just like obsessing about like everything needing to be perfect, everything needing to be um going in a certain way, and his routine has to be a certain way for him to be successful, which is something that his wife said in a quote here, where she said it wasn't, oh, I have a scheduling issue and I have to get this done at this time or else it's not going to work. It was not that. It was an unwillingness to compromise at all. And I think it was, I have to do this, otherwise I'm not going to be successful, which is going back to the perfectionist part of the OCD that he was living with. We just didn't realize that's what it was. And again, he went through treatment, daily treatment, going to a facility and going through, daily treatment with a therapist and talking with a therapist and doing what he had to do to feel okay again. I think one of the big things here, there's a part of this where it kind of talks about how, Courtney, Braden's wife, had conversations in the building. Braden, when it happened, Braden was having lunch at the facility, I believe, having a lunch at the facility, just gets up and walks out, right? And that was the last time, I believe, at least the way it made it sound in here, I believe that was, the last time that he was with the Colts during the season. But the Colts knew what was going on. They understood what was going on. They helped as much as they could along the way, and backed Braden and backed his family throughout the process. And again, the Colts doing an incredible job about keeping things out of the public eye. I think typically the Colts tend to do that. When they want to release information, they'll release information. But for the most part, I feel like the Colts are generally pretty good about keeping especially sensitive information in-house. And the way they handled this situation with everything that was going on, it's only right that like the only way it ever gets talked about publicly is if Braden talks about it. And again, to come out and talk about the things that he talked about, going through the entire process, like this is a longer article, and they go through the entire process about the beginning and kind of where things were and how things were going. Right, takes you through the turmoil and where they were, then takes you through a point where it actually talks about how things got worse because he was already frustrated by a knee injury that forced him to get surgery in 2024 off season, and the added pressure to come back and be able to play all the games and to be there for his team. Like that added pressure kind of built in and made things tougher for him, which eventually led to the point where he just felt like he had to step away. But again, like as you get to the bottom of this article and you get to the end of this, like the good news is that Braden is at a point where he's been able to figure it out. There are a couple different things that he did on his way to recovery. that I thought was interesting. Something called ibogaine, and my only knowledge of it is what's here in this article. And again, the link is in the description if you want to go through and read it. But it does have psychoactive effects, something that is technically illegal. You had to go to Mexico to be able to get this treatment, but something that seems to do well with, it says, treating opioid addiction, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injury. It also states here that it helps reduce PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and improves function in veterans with TBI. So there are a lot of good things. There's potential heart problems that come along with it. So that's why it's illegal. But ibogaine, something that was part of his recovery, and something that I mean, the way he describes it. And I'll just go ahead and read this quote to you. This is how important the ibogaine was to his recovery, at least from his experience. He said, "Quote: Imagine your brain as a ski slope, and you create all these grooves from all these trails that you've been going on, and they keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Those are the habits that we create, and over time, it's not going to be possible to create a new trail because that one is so deep. Ibogaine literally will clear all those off, like the receptors in your brain." So essentially talking about, right, how the habits that we create are so deeply instilled in us. There's something about ibogaine and the psychoactive effects of ibogaine that kind of help wipe that away, right? Give you seemingly fresh outlook. Now there is something called a gray day in the treatment that he went through. There was a third day in this thing where it was called the gray day, and that's one thing Braden talks about, like, doing ibogaine should never be done recreationally. It should always be done under supervision of somebody that knows what they're doing, that's administering it, and like the reasons for administering it, and because that gray day is a tough one, right? In the recovery of the mental process, it's one where, I mean, it's gray day. They call it gray day for a reason. A lot of up and down thoughts throughout that day, from the sounds of it. But then I thought it was interesting where it says, then come the fourth day, the day for 5-MeO-DMT, another naturally occurring psychedelic. Now, if you don't know what this is, and that's a lot, that's like a technical term for it, 5-MeO-DMT, it is DMT. That's what you'll hear other people call it, right? DMT is a insane psychedelic drug. Something that most people, when they do it, can't really explain to you what it is they see. And that's what Braden Smith talks about. He says, quote, talking about the DMT and the experience from the DMT. And a lot of people have talked about DMT being really good for curing different types of traumas. Right, PTSD is certainly one of them, but different types of traumas, and DMT helping people's mental state and kind of helping set them free in a different way. And this is what Braden Smith had to say about it. He said, "I can't explain it except for me and God were intimately just one. When I started calling on Jesus' name, I was like, I need you to heal me. Please forgive me for everything. I shot up, and it seemed like I was being exorcised of demons out of me, or bad energy, or whatever it was. It didn't take much. It just took me surrendering to God, calling on his name." So again, a lot of this for Braden Smith revolves around his faith. And there are a lot of people like that, right? That are deeply rooted in their faith. And Braden, his journey is all about his faith, and how deep into his faith that he got. And of course, this version of OCD, really took him over. But he seems like, after his experiences, the things that he went through, the treatment that he went through, the therapy sessions, it seems like he's at a place, right? This ends with the coming home section where, now he says, now I have a blank slate, and that he can create good habits, and that's really all you want in life. That's like it's just it's interesting as I went through this article. It just feels like Braden Smith and I, very similar points in life. Not to say that, anything I've gone through, he's had experience of, or vice versa, right? Different experiences get us all to where we are, but it's just one of those things. As I went through this, we all go through our own stuff, and this was something that is easy for me to sympathize with and empathize with. Somebody that's just trying to create good habits, but right, physically, mentally, emotionally, like creating good habits off of the base of who you are. And that's one thing his wife said, like coming home, like he seems like he's able to shape himself into the person that he's always meant to be, and the person that he wants to be, right? Which again is like, that's the goal in life. And I feel that, man. That's my daily struggle as well, is just trying to figure out, how to keep the mental right. And I think that's something a lot of us struggle with. For me, it's workout, meditate, catch myself in negative thoughts, and just turn it around. Gratitude is an incredible thing. Thinking about the people that I love, thinking about the people that love me, right? Those are things that I think are really powerful. Gratitude is maybe one of the most powerful things that I've found, that can really help the mental man. Just gratitude. You feel yourself slipping, just be happy about something. There's something in life, whether it's, hey, you woke up today, something as simple as that, right? And really having gratitude for the opportunity to be better today. Again, for yourself and for other people. And I think again, it's good to see him be able to come back. Obviously, reworks his contract for the Colts, going from $16.75 million in salary to $8 million in salary, up to $11 million with incentives. His cap figure goes from 19.75 to $10.4 million. So saving some money, not as much as they could have if they drop him, but they stand by Braden Smith. Braden Smith wanted to play football, right? He wanted to retire at one point. Now he wants to play football again, specifically for the Colts. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, being on the field, when he's on the field, one of the best right tackles in the game. That's really been the thing with him over time, is just the injuries and everything that goes on there. So hopefully, right, just coming back, and can just continue to get better, continue to stay in that good spot, and continue to triumph over everything that's thrown at him. But seems like he's currently in a good spot, which is great news. Anybody, again, we all battle our different things. And he's an NFL player. Now his story is very public, and shout out to him for having the courage to say everything that he said, right? Talking about suicide and talking about how dark things got. And the whole journey, coming out and talking about that so publicly, honestly, something that is inspiring, right? To be that vulnerable, and to be able to speak on that. The Colts do so much with kicking the stigma, and I think that's a big deal for the organization to stick behind Braden Smith the way that they have, with everything that he's going through, with them being the ones that started kicking the stigma, and they've been able to get other teams on board with that over the past few seasons. It's just, I think overall, it's like these are the sorts of things that remind you the power of sport, but also remind you that these guys are just humans. These guys are just one of us, just figuring it out. They're just massive human beings, and they're the best at what they do in the world. But nonetheless, man, between the ears, they're just one of us. And at the end of the day, just happy Braden's doing better. Hope it stays that way. Of course, any of you guys going through, man. We all go through our different battles. We all have our different stressors, and of course, just hope you continue to get through it, man. Keep grinding through it. Whatever you're going through, just the daily work, man. You got to go through the daily work to get to where you want to go, and eventually we're all going to get there, man. Eventually, all of our dreams are going to come true. We just have to work for it. And again, gratitude, man. Gratitude is something that I've found can really help the mental as you continue to go along, and just make that a habit. And that's what we're talking about, creating good habits. So again, the link for this article is going to be in the description. You guys want to go through, again, it's a lengthy article, but it shares so much more detail than what I gave you here, right? This is 20-minute conversation we're having, but there's so much more in depth in this article. Shout out to the Indy Star. Shout out to Joel Erickson having this published and to put this out. Shout out to Braden and his wife Courtney, and shout out to the Colts organization for their part in helping Braden get better. So that's what's going on with Braden Smith. Let me know your thoughts on this whole subject down in the comments section. And again, link in the description. I advise you guys to go check this out. If you enjoy the content, make sure you hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you continue to get notified anytime we drop any content on this channel. Of course, appreciate you stopping by for another video. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.